All right, looks like the participant list is starting to slow down a little, so we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to the Travel Information Meeting, March 2021. My name is Kelly McGarry with Travel Services, Compliance Analyst, and joined by April Berger, who will be presenting later, who's also a Compliance Analyst, and also joined by Teresa Athen, who is the Assistant Director overseeing travel as well as the Procurement Customer Service team. Just a couple of housekeeping things. So, like we mentioned in the email, we will be recording this meeting and sending out the recording via the listserv as usual. You can usually expect that 1 to 2 business days after the meeting, so we have a little time to edit it and stuff like that. We send that out as a YouTube link, so you're welcome to share that with your travelers or any of your staff. So we'll be sending that out. We also include a PDF copy of the slides as well. So you'll get a YouTube link and the PDF copy. So if anyone was unable to attend, feel free to share that with them. Also, just want to go over how we handle questions, which we also mentioned in the email. So if you have any questions related to what we're presenting on, so basically the information that's presented on that slide, feel free to type those questions out in the chat. And we will address those after presenting the slide. If you have any other general questions, so any department policy questions or any other stuff that's going on, feel free to ask those. But we'll be addressing those at the end, just to make sure that we get through all the content and everything like that. So we will answer those questions, but we hold any general questions not related to what we're specifically presenting on to the end of the meeting. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we wanted to do is take a look at some data. And what we're looking at here is a bit of a kind of COVID financial impact slide. And so the approach we took, so the bottom part of the chart is comparing calendar year 20 versus calendar year 19. So since we haven't hit an entire fiscal year yet, we decided to take a look at the calendar year. And so, as you can imagine, there's been a substantial drop in the amount that we've spent on travel. Sorry, let me mute my phone. And so, looking at the total travel spend, we usually spend somewhere in the $70 million ballpark. And in the calendar year 2020, we spent around 23 million. So that's about a 68% drop. When looking at expense reports and CTA, we spend around 60 million. So we spend about another 14 million on top of expense reports and CTA. Some other things broken out, since there's like honorarium travel and consultant travel and stuff like that, aren't included in the expense reports and CTA, but we like to include it in the total travel spend. So for expense reports and CTA, we're down about 70%. For per diem, we're down 70% as well. And then for airfare, about 73%. And so pretty much kind of around what we were expecting. And another thing we also kind of took a look at is just looking at how much travel we spent from January to March, just to get like a even more accurate idea of what that drop is. And we usually spend around 15 million just between January and March. So when looking at the percentage of that, the total travel spend drop is actually, these numbers are more in the between 80 to 90% ballpark. So yeah, it's kind of interesting to see it from a financial perspective, really what this impact is and how much less we've spent over this past year. We also took a look, just specifically at domestic versus international airfare. These numbers were pretty interesting. We looked at April to December, so these really are, truly COVID impacts, not including any of the January through March. So we looked specifically at those like COVID impact months. And domestic travel is down 95%, and air international also down about 95%. Definitely, kind of what we would expect with the international travel ban, as you're aware of, that's going on now. And even a little surprisingly, the domestic travel is actually down more than international. You think maybe international might be slightly more down because of our travel ban, but because COVID's so prevalent in the U.S., so many trips were canceled on the domestic front as well. So yeah, pretty crazy how down that is. And then per diem, pretty similar numbers, down 87%, as well as 90%. Obviously, people aren't flying to those locations. We wouldn't be paying that per diem as well. You have to be on travel status, so would kind of impact that as well. So John Salos has a question. I'm just curious, are these only approved expenses? I know that in some cases the traveler needs to eat the cost. Not compliant travel expenses they are trying to claim. So yeah, well, we're looking at this chart, it would only be things that were, yeah, fully approved. So it'd be, these are all, fully processed travel. I'm not sure I understand the second. So I know that in some cases the traveler needs to eat the cost if they are non-compliant travel expenses they're trying to claim. But yeah, so these are all approved expenses. Okay, so next we're going to take a look at the Real ID Act. So we've presented on this a couple times, but it's been a few meetings since we've talked about it. The reason we haven't really talked about it is the deadline was pushed back because of COVID. Originally, there has been a couple different deadlines. It was supposed to be October 1st of 2020, but it was pushed back again because of COVID. But now that we're pushing into 2021, we want to go ahead and remind you all again that this will be happening. So if you don't know the Real ID Act, maybe you're new to travel here at UW, haven't heard about this before. But yeah, there's a federal law that will be enforced in Washington State on October 1st of 2021. And essentially what it goes over is it's going to be setting, new ID standards that must be met within the state. The most impactful for us would be, how you get through the airport security. There's going to be new standards that need to be met. We did provide a link that has some more information. We've provided the same link before, and I double checked the link's still live and it's still got a good resource. So feel free to visit that website if you want to learn a little bit more. We're just kind of presenting it at a high level. That website has some more detail. And so the big thing is a standard Washington driver's license identification card does not meet the new standard. And so if you have, just a standard Washington driver's license or just an identification card, you will not be able to make it through security. And then of course, if you have any travelers out there, same thing applies. If they don't have either of those, if they just have that, they will not meet the new standard. And so if you go to that website, it has the full list of all the different things that are accepted. And I went ahead and included just some of the, kind of popular ones, standard ones that people would, obtain to be able to meet it. I myself actually just have a Washington driver's license. I need to get my passport, so it's something I need to take care of as well. But yeah, passport works, an enhanced driver's license, or U.S. military ID or a green card are all accepted forms of identification. And there are some more, so just check out that website if you're curious on that full list. And we'll continue to update since we're getting closer to that. So you can expect us to have reminders in the upcoming information meetings, just so we drill it into you that you're aware of that deadline. Okay, so 75% first and last day per diem. This is something we presented on in the last information meeting. So just a little recap on, kind of what we did before. So this is something, it's not really like a policy change necessarily that we were pushing. We just really wanted to kind of test the waters and sort of just feel out, what campus was thinking in regards to this policy change. So just a real recap on what that policy change would have been. So currently we determine our per diem for meal per diem based on start and end times of travel status. So depending on when you leave from home or your duty station, and then when you return back to your home or your duty station, we enter an Ariba in the expense report, what time you left, what time you got back, and then based on the per diem of that location, it calculates the per diem. One thing we were kind of feeling out is the way the federal policy treats per diem, and what they do is just on your first travel day and first and last day of travel, basically your travel days, they just give you 75% per diem on those travel days. That way you don't have to worry about entering the times and things like that. They just say, okay, that's a travel day. We give you 75%. So that's the policy we were kind of the policy that we were feeling out. And so based on all the work we've done on this, we decided we will not be moving forward with this policy change. And that decision is based on feedback we gathered through the travel information meeting. So if you were in that information meeting, there was definitely quite a few, concerns that were raised based on that policy change. So we heard you loud and clear on that. Also in the survey, so we took the time to really go through all the survey responses and really just feel it out and go through every response and go over it as a team. Also like discuss it with leadership and all that kind of stuff. And so there was a lot of definitely some concern, raised in that survey, and we agreed with the group on that. And we also took a look at reimbursement data as well. And so we had mentioned that it was kind of tough to do the data on this before, but we kind of reevaluated and we worked specifically with the Ariba development team. The Ariba development team can do some like custom reporting, some cool custom reporting that we necessarily can't do on our end. And they were actually able to pull some pretty good reports for us. So we got a little creative on it. And kind of looking at the data, we determined that actually it would be a pretty significant impact as far as, how much per diem we're going to be paying to staff. And I know there's a lot of concerns, regarding pushback from faculty and all that kind of good stuff. So yeah, after taking a look at all those things and considering it, we decided it just doesn't make sense to move forward. So as we move into finance transformation, we'll be making the push to keep things basically the same as now. And one thing we do want to mention, Teresa just reminded me to make sure I mentioned this. So there is some movement on the state side of things. They may want to push to the 75% per diem rule. There's nothing set in stone on that. They're kind of doing the same thing that we're doing right now, sort of testing the waters and kind of feeling it out. So kind of like our official feedback would be to them would be that, that we want to, keep things the way they are. But just know that if the state does move forward on this policy change, that's something that, we would need to align with, because since we're a state agency, we need to follow the state policy. It's possible, we could go out for a waiver or something like that. But just keep that on your radar, that the state is evaluating this as well. The state does like the 75% per diem rule. But now that, as a campus, we decided that we don't want it, we'd be kind of, trying to probably fight against it or do a waiver kind of thing. But just keep that on your radar. And we will give you tons of notice if there was any, anything moving forward on that, but just wanted to bring it up just so you're aware. But as of now, our official decision as a university, we will not be moving forward with this. Okay. And now I'm going to turn it over to April, and she will be presenting on hosting away from home. So take it away.
Hi, everybody. So today I'm going to talk to you about a couple of common questions that have been coming up over these past few months as we have been doing everything virtually, and a lot of common events that normally happen in person are now having to take place online. And so we wanted to bring up these common questions so we can just address things across the board and help inform campus of policy. You'll find that a lot of these issues actually fall outside of travel policy, and we'll get into that in these slides. So this first slide is hosting away from home. One of the common questions we've been getting is, can a department pay for a person's Airbnb or hotel room for an interview due to concerns of internet connection, disruption, recruitment, etc.? So it would not be a travel reimbursement because the traveler would not be in travel status. They would still be in their within 50 miles of their official residence or their official duty station. So they would not be eligible for a travel reimbursement. However, we have partnered with other entities like PCS Help and Teresa, who manages both PCS Help and travel, to discuss this. And we feel that it is allowable if the department can provide a solid business reason in treating the venue as a meeting location and not lodging, and is applied to all travelers in like circumstances. So an example of a solid business reason is you're interviewing someone in a foreign country that may not have a stable home internet. That could potentially meet that solid business reason. But as we always reiterate, this must be applied to all travelers in like circumstances. So, please use caution when deeming it necessary. Also, if it does meet this criteria, it would be reimbursed on an XR, an e-reimbursement, because as I mentioned, it is not lodging and it would be considered a meeting space. Kelly, next slide. Oh, the code for that, I don't know because Teresa or Kelly, I'm not too familiar with XR codes. I'm only familiar with travel.
Yeah, I don't know the code off the top of my head. Let me check. I'll check the object code list real quick while April's presenting. But if not, yeah, we can look it up for you. Yeah, maybe over 16 that Buzzy just mentioned. But yeah, we'll double check that and let you know what a good one to use is.
Okay, so we'll get back to you on that. So the next slide is for virtual meetings, open houses, celebrations. This somewhat relates to the previous slide in terms of in addition to wanting to pay for lodging, departments are also wanting to pay for the meals as well. In addition to that, we've been getting questions, can a department pay for a participant's meal via Uber Eats, DoorDash, etc.? There's many food delivery services out there. And so the answer is it's not allowable because the participants are not in travel status, so they're not eligible for per diem, just as with regards to lodging per diem. This can only be reimbursed on an XR e-reimbursement if it meets the UW food policy. And as I stated, we did partner with other entities on campus to discuss the food policy. So this isn't our area of expertise, but we did want to provide you some information regarding the food policy to help give you some background and some guidance on this. So please be advised that you must be using an appropriate budget, as many budgets are not approved for food and or alcohol purchases. So the first step is making sure that you have an appropriate budget. Kelly, next slide. Now this slide is a bit wordy, but the information on here will help guide you with regards to, is it appropriate to provide food? So the meal or light refreshment must be an integral part of the official UW meeting or formal training session, such as a lunch speaker, or when obtaining meals away from the meeting location would be disruptive to event continuity. And we've been advised that obtaining meals away from the meeting location in relation to this request, the remote working location, which would be the person's home, would not be disruptive to the event continuity. So it doesn't meet that requirement. Another requirement states that the meeting or formal training must be conducted at a location away from the place where the employees normally perform his or her work, such as an employee's desk or cubicle. Acceptable locations include a meeting and or conference room. However, because we are working in a remote setting, their home would be considered the employee's normal work location. So therefore, it doesn't meet that requirement as well. We have provided the policy link down below for more information regarding meetings and trainings. Kelly, next slide. Then there's the HR recognition policy. So just to kind of recap the previous slides, in terms of the previous slide, that was addressing virtual meetings, such as like an interview or a meeting. This slide addresses celebrations. We have been getting questions about you know, an end of year event for a department or a celebration of that milestone. So we wanted to address recognition policy as well. So along with needing to use the appropriate budget, the HR recognition policy states that departments need to define specific behaviors or outcomes that will be recognized, the criteria for eligibility, and a selection process to name the recipient. And then all costs associated with the event, such as refreshments, a gift may not exceed $200. So in the event that you feel that, oh, this meeting or celebration would meet the recognition requirements, please be advised that the department has to predefine the criteria before the event can take place. So you can't just say that, oh, this is a recognition event just so that you can purchase light refreshments and things of that nature. And then we also provided a policy link for more information on that. And then question. Can we, so Janelle asked, can we plan an event when everyone returns to campus on a 64 budget? I believe that is allowable because the 64 budget is a discretionary budget, so it should allow for that. But as I stated from the very beginning, this is outside of a travel reimbursement. So I would recommend utilizing the food policy link and then also reaching out to PCS Help for additional information or questions. Donna asked, when using discretionary, do the same rules apply? I believe they do not. If I remember correctly, on the recognition link, it does state that it is allowable if using discretionary funds. But I also believe on the food policy link, there is a giant chart and it has a breakdown of all the different types of budgets. And on the 64, that stuff is allowable. Kelly or Teresa, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in on this a little bit. There's a couple other questions as well. Yeah, and yeah, Teresa, if you want to jump in on this, but I think let me go back to this other slide. And so really, yeah, the first thing you want to take out is really just taking a look at this. Um, and I can't, yeah, you wanted to like, take a look at this and make sure, if it is under this criteria, then essentially what we're saying is it's not allowed at all. Um, and I don't believe it would be allowed on a 64, even under this scenario. I might have Teresa correct me if I'm wrong on that. Are you here, Teresa?
I wasn't sure if you wanted me to correct you. You're correct. I mean, you're not. No, you're not. The 64 budget can be used. If it's a 64 discretionary budget, because a 64 discretionary budget can go outside of policy.
Okay.
But if you want to make sure that you do, is that you document your reasoning for going outside of policy and using your 64. So document a business need, because your 64 will still be audited.
Correct. Okay. So yeah. So when you take a look at this policy, yeah, you want to make sure you're very careful about reviewing the food approval page, and then but if it's on a 64, obviously that has some more flexibility. So in that case, it would be allowed as long as the funding allows for it. Again, you still need to document things and everything like that. But as far as following like the food approval or any other like standard budgets, you need to follow, keep an eye on this policy. And then go from there. And then, like April mentioned, there is, kind of a bit of an exception when it comes to the recognition policy. So this comes from HR. We are not experts on this policy, so make sure you check out that link. And if you have any questions about that recognition policy, you'll want to reach out to HR specifically on that. So kind of what that's saying is the recognition policy, yeah, it could be a bit of an exception to this meeting if you can really define it as a recognition. So you'll want to like look at these links really closely, give them a good review. If you think if you think it doesn't meet this, but that it meets, the recognition policy, then you go to the recognition policy, review that, and then work with HR if you have any questions about that policy specifically. And then kind of like what Teresa was mentioning with the 64 and what April was mentioning, 64, you can kind of go outside policy because of just the way that funding works. You'll just want to make sure that the funding does still truly allow for it, even though it's a 64. There could be cases where the 64 still isn't allowed for it. So drill into the funding, make sure the funding allows for it. And then, yeah, make sure everything's documented properly. And I want to address a couple of these other questions. So I'm going to go back to the object code. I know there was a little discussion on the object code. And so I did take a look, and it looks like 0391 for most cases sounds like it would be the most appropriate, like a couple people have mentioned. And yeah, like other people mentioned, there are no 04 object codes on the e-reimbursement module, so you wouldn't be able to enter any of those. So for most cases, based on the questions we've gotten and things I've seen, it seems like 0391 would be the most appropriate.
Kelly, I'm really sorry.
You're good.
I'm checking with PCS right now, and according to PCS, 0391 is not available in e-reimbursements.
Oh, it's not? Okay.
I was thinking it was 0391 as well. So they're checking on which, I'm asking them which one they recommend, so stay tuned. And once they let me know, I will let everyone else know.
Okay, yeah. So more to come on that. I guess 0391 is not in e-reimbursement. We got people looking on it. So before the meeting's over, we'll give you our official recommendation. Okay. So our department set up DoorDash account. Can we use it to pay for remote open house meals? So this kind of just ties back to what I was just saying. You'll want to review all these different links we provided. Again, reviewing what we said about the remote policy. If it falls outside of the scope of that, what we're saying for virtual meetings, then you'll want to check out the recognition policy. If you can meet the recognition policy, then it might be possible. And then if you have a 64 discretionary and the funding allows for it, that would be your other option. So you'll just kind of want to take all that stuff into account. And yeah, and feel free to, yeah, if you're still a little confused about, the things we presented on, you're welcome to give us a call and reach out about your, specific situation. Could these type of meals purchased as gift cards be reimbursed when the budget is food approved or food approval form is completed? Object code 0349. And so, yeah, kind of just ties into everything I was just saying. So yeah, check out this policy. Is it blocked based on what we said regarding, remote meals? If that's the case, then at first it's not reimbursable. Yeah, you'll want to double check the food approval form. And then if it is blocked by what we were saying about the remote policy, then you go to you can check that recognition policy, work with HR on it. If it meets that criteria, then you have some flexibility there. And then outside of that, you would need to look at 64 discretionary if the funding allows for it. And then as far as the object code, would probably need a little bit more detail on what's going on with it to be able to make that determination. But you're welcome. Once you get to the point, if you determine it's reimbursable, you're welcome to reach out to us. We can help you with the object code. Okay, let's see. So John Salas, can we not have catering during regular in-person staff meetings like coffee and bagels? I may have missed some details. So again, that kind of ties back into the remote. Most of what we're talking about, John, is like when people are connecting like via Zoom and the department wants to pay for somebody eating a meal while they're in a Zoom meeting. So if you've already determined in the past, if you're doing in-staff meetings and you're providing, and those are like an integral, part of the meeting, that kind of thing, and you've reimbursed it in the past, you're probably good to go on those. What we're talking about more is questions coming up because of COVID. So because people are hosting virtual meetings, we've been getting questions about that. But if you're doing, your regular catering stuff in person, that's already been determined reimbursable, you should be set on that. Okay, so Teresa was just saying, the 64.
So Teresa responded that from the response from PCS is the reason 0391 is not in reimbursement is that normally this is an expense they should have been able to pay for without using personal funds. We would probably need to know who they paid, as it could be a tax reportable purchase, and we might need to explain that they have to send information to the tax office regarding the purchase. After all that information, the account code would probably be 0369 or 0399.
Awesome. Thank you, April.
And then as I'm reviewing some of the other questions and comments, I think that we should just reiterate that this is not travel policy, so we are not subject matter experts. So the information that we're providing to you is information that we've sourced from PCS and HR. So this is not even our information, but we just want to share it with you as it pertains to why it's not a travel reimbursement. So we're always happy to help kind of guide you along, but as you get to these more specific questions, I think it's best to reach out to the subject matter experts so that we don't give you any misinformation. Marissa, could you add the object code information to the slides? Yeah, we can, but we will make sure to preface that this is just a suggested object code, that it's not officially what the object code is. It always is dependent on each situation. Kelly, can you go back one slide for Yoshi? And then did you have any specific questions, Yoshi, about this slide?
Yeah, just as a reminder, we will, these are the meetings recorded, and we will be sending it out via the listserv. So you'll get a PDF copy of the slides as well as the recording. And yeah, thanks for adding that info, April. So yeah, this is definitely falling outside of our scope of expertise a little bit. So that's why it's a little difficult for us to answer all the questions. But we wanted to really address this because from our perspective, we just wanted to make it clear, that it's not a travel reimbursement. It doesn't meet travel policy, that you need to kind of look at these other policies to see where it fits.
Eileen said, I really appreciate your bringing this subject up, but it clearly affects many people. Do you know how we can get a clear direction? It sounds to me as even Teresa did not receive a firm answer. So actually, this information has been vetted by Teresa and her manager. So this information is accurate. It's just very situational. So that's why it doesn't seem very clear because it's from situation to situation. And you just have to apply this information as it meets your circumstance. And then I do believe that Teresa mentioned in a meeting with us that they will be doing some sort of a webinar or newsletter regarding food policy. So be on the lookout for that. So Lisa, what does PCS acronym stand for? Procurement Customer Service. Denise, could you put the food policy slide up again? There's some language in there that is not on the PCS webpage. Denise, is it the previous, or Kelly, go back one slide? So Kelly, if I can ask you to get this information to Denise while we potentially move on.
Yeah, let's keep moving. If you give us your email address, we can actually just send you over the slide or something like that right now if you want to take a closer look. But yeah, as I mentioned, we're going to be sending out the PDF and the recording, so we want to keep them moving. Oh, you got a screenshot? Okay, great. All right. Any more questions related to this content?
And I think that with all these questions that these great questions that you have in chat, just shows that, this is why we wanted to bring up these common questions, because we know that your departments have had to adapt to not being in person and having these normal events and having to change them into a virtual setting. So we wanted to just provide some information, and it shows that this information is very much needed. So Kelly, next slide. So I'm sure everyone received yesterday the email from President Anna Marie Casse regarding phase 3, and that Washington State has moved to phase 3, and she provided a bunch of information regarding the university's transition to phase 3. So we wanted to update you because we get a lot of questions still regarding if travel is allowed. So we wanted to go over phase 3 travel guidance. So on this slide, in her email, there is a link in there, and we have included it on this slide, and it directs you to information regarding all 4 phases of the Washington safe plan. And so we were previously on phase 2. We are now in phase 3. And as you can see from the screenshot image, if you click on the drop down for phase 3 and you scroll down with all that information, there is a section on travel where it says official international travel and non-essential domestic travel are restricted under university guidelines. Non-essential personal travel is strongly discouraged. Check with your unit's leadership regarding unit-specific restrictions. If you click on the university guidelines where I highlighted in yellow, Kelly, next slide. If you click on that, it's going to direct you to the image that is on the left-hand side where it says travel and study abroad. And if you click on the drop down under the question, are there restrictions on travel by UW employees? It's going to provide you with the information that I have screenshot on the right-hand side. So as of now, international travel is still restricted, but you can still request a waiver for international travel. As for domestic travel, that has also remained the same. We do get a lot of questions regarding domestic travel, and we just want to reiterate that there is no official travel ban on domestic travel. It is up to the department's discretion, and they even state on the website that the department needs to use their best judgment. Is it absolutely necessary for business? And then in addition to that, we have been getting some questions regarding if the traveler is vaccinated, does that make them eligible to travel? That has not been listed as a requirement for international or domestic travel. If the department chooses to make that a requirement in order to travel, that is up to the department's discretion, because that would be stricter than university policy because we do not have it as a requirement. You'll also notice that UW Medicine has their own specific restrictions on their travel policy. So if you are a part of UW Medicine, please click on that restricted work-related travel for all employees link, and that'll direct you to their policy and their requirements. So Mary asked, what happens if we book an approved travel and then we have a reoccurrence in COVID and move back to phase 2? Does it have to be canceled? So as I mentioned, if you're referring to domestic travel, there is no travel ban. So if the department has determined that it is appropriate and necessary for the traveler to travel, they would just have to make the determination if that should change or not. Lane asked, my supervisor is planning to travel to Hamburg in September. Is there a special permission I have to get? So I'm assuming Hamburg, it does have to get approval. You would have to have a waiver if that's what you're asking. So if you go, if you look under the international travel section, if you click on the Office of Global Affairs, they have information on obtaining a travel waiver and all the steps in the process for that. So they do have to obtain that. Something I would also like to reiterate. So if if they purchased travel for their trip to Germany and they did not obtain a waiver, and they aren't able to, and they don't get approved for their trip, they would not be eligible for reimbursement because they obtained that with a travel ban in place. So keep that in mind. Their waiver is not required for domestic travel. As I stated, there is no travel ban on domestic travel. It is up to the discretion of the department to determine if it is necessary for business. Waivers are only required for international travel. Are there any other questions for this? So we just want to, I also would like to reiterate that these two links on these last two slides are always, if you ever ask us, you know, is travel allowed? These are the two links that I'm going to reference first and foremost always. So I highly recommend that you bookmark these two links and just periodically check if there's any updated information. This information is updated by the Office of Global Affairs and the Provost Office, as they have the Provost Office has the final say in what the travel restrictions are. So you will always hear it from them first, and they will always update their websites. So I highly recommend, like I said, to bookmark these and just check in time to time to see if any information has been updated. But phase 3 guidance has not changed from phase 2 guidance regarding travel. And that's pretty much all I have, unless you have any other questions. Erica, so regarding international travel, the person can get a waiver, but if the expenses were purchased while travel ban was in place, they cannot be reimbursed. So they can get reimbursed if they receive a waiver. So what they should be doing is they should be obtaining the waiver. Once their travel is approved, then they should be purchasing their travel accommodations. If they are, so we have had some situations even with conferences. They've purchased conference registration for a conference that they thought that they would be able to attend. And then it turns out that COVID has decided to stick around a lot longer. And so therefore they were not able to attend the conference. The conference was not changed to a virtual setting. So they were not able to receive reimbursement because they should have waited to make sure that the travel could have taken place because there was a travel restriction in place at the time of purchase. Matt, we always make these slides available. They are available on we will make them available on our website. We will also be sending out a listserv with a recording and the slides as a PDF.
I'll take it over.
Okay. Thanks,
That's
everybody.
So that's the end. Thank you, April. So that's the end of our travel slides. We're going to now transition over to the FT portion, finance transformation portion of the presentation. And we have Rachel here from Finance Transformation who is going to present. I just need a moment to get the slides ready. Just 1 second. All right.
Awesome.
There we go. And I made Rachel a co-host. So yeah, should be able to present now. And here's Rachel.
Yeah. Thank you, Kelly. Will you be able to advance the slides for me?
Yeah. I got
Okay,
control. So
perfect.
just let me know when you're ready to move it along.
Awesome. So we have a pretty broad update today. I've got also some quick links for you guys. You'll see at the end of the presentation with more information on what we'll talk about today for anyone who is interested or who may have questions. So if we go to the next slide, our big kind of broad update is about our timeline. So this is our current timeline. We've shown the current timeline a while ago, actually, I think probably over a year ago. At this point, it was the last time we presented the timeline here in the travel forum. And this one has a slight difference. So we're looking kind of left to right? Starting in January 2020 is the start of all of the finance transformation active work that we've been working on. The current go live date is June 2022. So if we go back to the left, right, we have plan and architect phases, and then here's where the new phase is architect validation. So a lot of the focus in plan and architect was really about a lot of kind of data gathering, of thinking through business processes and setting up our process transformation teams to be thinking about all the different bodies of work that UW has, right? So kind of just a quick refresh. Some of those bodies of work are things like, how do we manage our assets? How do we manage our grants? What about procurement functions and supply chain and things like that? So through kind of the things that we have been learning and working on in Architect, there has been a need for this architect validation stage. And if we flip to the next slide, we'll see kind of a little bit more why, right? So when we did at the university, the Big Hackett study back in 2012, we found that we have over 900 systems that all kind of tie into the way that we do financial work all across the university, which is a lot. It's a ton of systems. And part of the tech work that we've been doing in Plan and Architect is starting to look into exactly what's needed for each of these systems. Are we going to keep them? Are we not going to keep them? Will we update them or integrate them into our future processes that we're figuring out? And as we've taken a dive a bit deeper into that work, right, there are more systems and technological complexities than was kind of initially shown at the surface level with that Hackett study and with the initial dispositioning work that's been done. So with kind of this new information that we've got, there's a need, right, that the program is seeing that we need to reprioritize some of this work, and we need to think a little bit more about these integration pieces across all of our enterprise partners. You may have also heard them referred to as collaboration partners. So this is 5 different groups that are going to be really heavily impacted and who are really critical to be helping us with finance transformation, right? So these groups are finance, UWIP, Forest, the Office of Research, UW Medicine, and the ISC. So thinking about all of the complexities and the intertwinings, right, between all the financial related work that we do, we want to make sure that all of these groups are in contact at the right time and that we have enough time and we have the right resources and the right planning in order to make sure that we are ready and able to go live. So with that knowledge that we've got now, right, one of the big focuses of the program that we're working on is during this particular architect validation stage is taking a step back and saying, okay, knowing what we know today, does our scope still make sense? How does that impact our schedule or our budget, right? So this kind of putting together work, this integrations focused work has been the focus largely of the architect validation stage. There's a proposal that the leadership and project management and our enterprise partners have been working on. The proposal of what we should do with this new information is going to be completed by the end of this month and will actually be put together to be a formal presentation that's going to go to program government. So that's our sponsors, people like Brian McCartan and Aaron Powell and some of the other big key decision makers will take a look and then more formally make a decision in April, towards the end of April of this month. So if we go one slide further, I believe, yeah, so here's some of the exit criteria, the things that are getting worked on in this plan, right? as we kind of mentioned, we're going to be thinking about the scope and then how that may also affect the schedule or the budget. We are anticipating, right, that we'll have an updated program process and structure. There is a reorg within kind of how FT is going to be operating to make sure that we are collaborating appropriately with all the different departments that need it. That is currently underway. It's just barely started. And then one of the last big pieces is thinking through and really getting clear on roles and responsibilities if we find any new information that we have not already found that may affect program scope, schedule, or budget. So we will have lots of announcements, I would say, by early May-ish, once those sponsors have been able to see, here's truly the scope of the work, here's how, we think it makes sense on scope, schedule, and budget, what would you like us to do? So we will be having additional updates, we'll be making changes, any that are needed to kind of our high level, like program timeline, things like that, that we'll be able to present in the future. If we go forward one more slide, I believe this is the quick links slide. Yeah. So Provost Mark Richards came out earlier this year with a blog talking about the need for this architect validation stage and some of the details that we covered today. So if you guys did not see the Provost blog or are interested, you can feel free. There's a quick link there. We've got a fact sheet and some talking points. And then we've got under general resources, these two quick links, one to the Change Network, which anyone with a UW NetID can log on to and see updated details about all these different aspects of the program, like our tech, our design, our big program updates. And then we have our Finance Transformation external site. This is a public site that has kind of that high level basic information that will also be updated as we may need to. So we have just a quick update for you guys today. That we are taking a step back and we are kind of reassessing and making sure that moving forward, we have got kind of our ducks in a row for all the things that we'll need to go live. And I believe that's all I have in slides today.
Awesome. Thank you, Rachel. So yeah, if you have any questions related to what Rachel is presenting on, feel free to ask and she can answer for you. And again, you can always reach out to FT at a later time. They have still have that email. They're fielding questions at any time. So if you can't think of any questions right now, feel free to reach out to them later as well. But now that we're moving towards the end of the meeting, like I mentioned before, feel free to ask any questions now related to any content that you want. So we're done with the meeting, but now we're moving into the Q&A. So feel free to ask any questions. And it looks like we got one question for you, Rachel. I heard the timeline might be pushed back a year. I'm wondering if that's true.
Yeah, so the proposal that has been getting looked at there have been three options to it, right? So one option is thinking about like a phased process, saying, okay, maybe we take procurement functionality that goes first, and then maybe we have a second go live date, right? Or a second wave with assets. That's been one option. Another option is that the medicine entity goes on our normal go live, and then Academy goes live a year later. And then the final option is that everybody would be pushed back a year. So there have been some folks in governance, I would say, saying that pushing back a year is the thing that makes the most sense. From where we are at in the program right now, there haven't been any decisions made because that work is still getting detailed and researched out. So the final decision will end up getting made in April, and then we'll communicate out as soon as there is alignment and a decision has been made.
Perfect, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then I got one. I think it looks like it was just direct. The question was finding more systems a surprise to me or to the program? The number of systems, I think, once we got them in Hackett, it made sense. The area where there's been an increased need for kind of taking this time to step back, which I also will just caveat is pretty normal for a program of this size or a project of this size. was more so about the complexity of those touch points between big groups like finance and UWIT, or the ISC and medicine and things like that. So from kind of a Workday perspective, since we are going live with Workday, that work has really already been determined. There's not really more additional work there, but it's more in our side systems and, hey, what about this process that we need that's critical to business and things like that. So I think in some ways, the depth or the complexity is one of those things that we've seen, and we've said, okay, this is new information to us as a whole. We want to make sure that we are not operating in silos and are taking our best step forward. So maybe a little bit of a mixed bag on whether the system complexities were a surprise or not to the program.
So yeah, it looks like you got another question. How does the FT change affect the UW Medicine Epic transition happening this weekend?
Yeah, as far as I am aware, the FT possible changes is not going to interact or affect the Epic transition that's happening this weekend. A lot of the work that the finance transformation department has been working with medicine, we've been, as much as we can, really sensitive to the work and the amount of time that is going to take for that Epic transition. There also is an initiative called the FIT, the FIT initiative over in medicine, which is totally separate and a little confusing from FT. So I hope that helps clarify. And then it looks like there's another question in here. Will you have user task groups? Yes. We're not yet at the point where travel is getting detailed out. But, and this may be something that could be helpful for next time that we look on the Change Network, there's an area, maybe I can demo it next time. There's an area there for business process transformation. And if you go specifically into the procurement and supply chain section, you'll see high level of some of the business processes that have already been approved. So in travel, specifically in expenses, there aren't those detailed level processes, but there are some high level, like we know these are the types of approvals we'll need, et cetera. So as we get further along in the process, there will be likely user task groups more dedicated to that. I know the travel team here, Teresa and April and Kelly, have been really helpful already in some of those high level processes that have been there. But if you guys are curious of what those look like, anybody with UW NetID has access to go see where we are in those processes today. Let's see. And then we have another question. Will finance administrators get any exposure to the new systems in any sort of beta form before the official go live? Kelly, would you mind backing up to the timeline slide that we had at the beginning of the deck? Thank you. And this is a really great question. This is from Con. So here in the timeline, right, we know this will probably have some changes made to it. However, the types of work that we're going to be doing are not going to change. So post-architect validation, we have config and prototype. Configure and prototype, some of that work we've started already, wherever we can, right? We don't want to delay any of the work unnecessarily of finance transformation. But config and prototype is where those processes will actually start getting built out in Workday. And that's where we'll start being able to have demos for folks that are helping us work on it, and user task groups. We'll be getting more involved kind of through this phase. And then once we get to this next section, test, we're going to have a test no matter what the go live date is, right? Test is this time where we will be pulling in folks who are like super users or power users, folks who have been helping us get more involved in detailing those design and business processes, and they'll be able to actually go through and see to make sure that, hey, the processes that we defined do make sense for the people who are going to do the work. And then right in between or right after test, we'll be in this deploy phase where we'll be doing really robust training for all the folks who are going to be using our systems and tools in Workday in the future. One of the really big lessons learned from the program was from our HRP go live, right? Where there were some instances where people felt they didn't have any training or enough training to do their jobs on day one of go live. So the deploy phase that we've got is currently slated for 3 months. And I believe test in current day, I believe that's a 9-month timeline there. So we are going to have a lot of time to make sure that folks are able to go into the system and see it and know what it looks like before go live.
Awesome. So any more questions related to FT while we have Rachel? Looks like we got one from Marissa. So for Workday Payroll in the testing phase, there was no time to implement fixes for problems found. Has this time been built in as lesson learned for this project?
That is a great question. I actually am not sure where some of the finer details of like our config and prototype, our test and deploy, but that's one that I can take back to kind of the larger team in the department, and we'll be able to give you guys an update. I'll send it to just the travel team if that's okay.
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Yeah. And then Ivanka is just trying to, I think, just get a general idea of like what the training is going to look like. Are you going to be doing it online, in person, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, there's a high level training strategy that is in the process of getting approved right now. So with training so far out, we don't have a totally clear picture of that yet. My understanding though is that there's going to be a number of different methods used. So training is one we would be happy to come back and present on if you guys are interested in hearing more about training at a future meeting.
Yeah, so definitely more to come on the training that's still being developed. Yeah, we'll definitely, I know a lot of people are interested in how the training and testing and all that stuff's going to be. So as we get more updates and Rachel has more content to present on that, we'll definitely have her keep coming out to present on that as we have our information meetings get closer. And Lane says it would be great to hear about FT training. Yeah, and yeah, we've been asked about it already, quite a few times and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of units just in general are asking about, how the training is going to work. So we'll definitely do our best to keep you all updated.
Awesome.
Ivanka's wondering, what is FT training? Can you just give kind of like a high level overview of what that really means?
Yeah, so the FT training will be training for those who do financial work in anything that's going to be moved to Workday, and then several of the gap applications. Some of the details of the additional systems outside of Workday are still being determined, but within each of those end-to-end sections, so like procurement supply chain is one, grants is another one, those are going to be trained. There will be training for each of the people and each of the staff levels, right, who are going to be ending up needing to go into Workday and then work on those things. Hopefully that helps. Oh, then here's a question. Will accrue include Ariba or will Ariba change? Yes. So this is actually a great question. Ariba will be going away. And on that Change Network website that I had mentioned earlier, we have a section, right, where all the business processes are posted. We also have a section for technology, and that actually lists all of those systems that we've got and their disposition status. So whether we will keep them or not keep them, etc. Ariba is one of those that will be retired, and its functionality will be moving into Workday. There are, I know on the Ariba kind of front, there are 2 gap applications that have been contracted out to make sure that we have all the functionality and we're able to do all the business work that we need to within Workday. Those 2 gap applications are called Scout and GHX. So Scout and GHX are 2 of the ones that the Finance Transformation Department is going to take over training for as well. So those things will be included as part of the training that our department does.
Thank you. So yeah, we have a question from John. It's kind of an interesting one surrounding like record retention. Will we be able to somehow access our older Ariba records? They have about 4 years of Ariba financial records. So yeah, if you have any like high level related to like how we're gonna be handling that.
Yeah, we don't have any big updates or decisions as far as I'm aware on records retention, but our department does meet with the records retention group regularly so that we can figure out and plan and get all of that ready by go live.
And yeah, I mean, we have, financial obligation to meet with that, John. So like we have the 6-year retention policy for travel records. And so yeah, FT will definitely be figuring all that stuff out. We won't just be deleting everything. So
yeah, absolutely.
You'll be able to access
We'll ensure UW is compliant with the amount of time that we need to hold all of our financial records. We store transaction backup in Ariba. Is this part of the plan for Workday? There is some additional research that's happening in Workday of how they manage and how they hold those transaction records. So that is part of the work that is being worked on right now with our records retention department here at UW.
And they're wondering if there's a tentative sunset date for Ariba.
That I am not aware of. That is something that will need to be worked through. I would say once we have our updated timeline, assuming there are updates to the timeline, that's something that the Ariba owners, so that'll be procurement or enterprise services, will need to work with finance transformation in order to figure out whatever the appropriate transition and dates are for that.
Yeah, so there'll definitely be more to come on that. And that's something that they'll be definitely communicating with us on, and we'll be communicating with you on if there's any sort of overlap or when that sunset date and transition will be, for sure. So
yeah, and then
that shouldn't be a surprise for you.
Yeah, I got another question, and FT stands for financial transformation. And then it looks like Ivanka is the next question. We did a lot of work to register all these vendors in Ariba. Do we need to go through this again? That is something that we have not determined yet of how that data will be integrated or transferred. Right now, the group who is working on kind of some of these processes, we're really still in the design work of figuring out what future state will end up looking like in Workday. So that integrations work and some of those integrations decisions of learning more about that is going to happen later in the program. And then another question from Ruth, will we still book travel through travel agents, or will there be something new? That is not something that I'm aware of. We're not quite that far along in the process.
Yeah, that kind of falls under us, I'd say a little bit more.
Yeah, I was going to ask if maybe you guys are aware or maybe have any insight on that one.
Yeah, so there, as of right now, right, there's going to be no changes to how travel is booked. That'll still be, happening outside of the Workday system. So like we've mentioned before, we have our 4 contracted travel agencies, so nothing will change with that. And then the policy as of now will remain decentralized, so it'll be up to the department on how things will be booked. If there are any shifts or anything like that, we would be communicating that. But as of right now, you can expect the way things are booked to remain the same.
Another question for Ivanka. I've heard that we will have least responsibilities in approval flow on department level. Is this true? This would be a great time to go onto that change network and see the high level process flow that we've got there, because that is the information that we've got as far as what the future state may look like. I do not know off the top of my head what that looks like, but if it would be helpful, maybe Kelly or April or Teresa, we could link to the change network.
Yeah, since there's been several questions, since we've mentioned a couple of things on the change network, what we'll do is when we send out the post-meeting listserv, we'll include some reference links to point you that way. So yeah, there's definitely some useful stuff on there. And we'll give you some more direct links, because I know we've kind of just mentioned in general where they are. And we'll give a little short sentence explaining what it is and how you get there. So you can expect that when we send out the thing. And that resource that Rachel's talking about is really good. It kind of just goes through like a high level, in more detail, like how those approval flows are starting to be built out and those decisions. So we'll give you some links on that.
Cool. And I can send over those quick links to you guys on travel.
Yeah, so we'll work with Rachel. We'll get the backstory and then include those links when we send out the listserv. And like I mentioned, we usually get it out a couple of business days. That way we can get the YouTube link all edited and everything like that. And we'll work with her, and that'll be in the body email. And we'll include her slides as well. So these slides that you're looking at right now will be there, and then we'll have those reference links as well.
Kelly, just to add, We will also be adding the object code to that one slide regarding the meeting space for the XR reimbursement. And then additionally, Teresa had pointed out, which I had missed in the chat, that Charlene Hansen had also offered up. If you have any questions regarding the food policy, you can always contact internal audit at iaudit@uw.edu for any food policy questions. So we'll go ahead and add that to our slides as well as a reference point.
Perfect, thank you. Alrighty, any more questions? So yeah, still fielding questions for FT. Also, yeah, we're done with all the slides. So like I mentioned, any department level questions, any other policy stuff, feel free to ask that at this time as well. Yeah, Sabina, no problem. Glad you find these valuable. But yeah, it looks like questions are slowing down, so we'll start to wrap things up. Thank you everyone for attending. Had some good questions today. Well, yeah, we appreciate all your feedback and being here to ask these good questions. And yeah, we're here to contact us anytime if you had any questions. Or if you think of anything after the meeting that's you're burning to ask, feel free to reach out to us. So our contacts travel@uw.edu. Our number is 206-543-5858. I can post that in the chat. And it's also on our website if you go to travel services page. Yeah, feel free to ask us anytime. If you go to Finance Transformation's website as well, if you go to their contacts section, they also have contact information as well. So anything related to the FT content, feel free to ask them as well.